Welcome to the Church Leadership Podcast, where we are all about encouraging and equipping local church leaders to be disciples who make disciples. With your hosts, Mark Gainey and Andy Frazier. In each episode, Andy and Mark have authentic conversations that help you grow as you lead the local church. Thanks for joining the podcast, and be sure to subscribe to the show. Here is today's episode.
Welcome to today's episode of the Church Leadership Podcast. I'm excited. Andy and I have a really, helpful discussion and topic for you today. Our mission here at Church Leadership Podcast is to encourage and equip leaders in the local church to be disciples and make disciples, and that's what this episode is all about. Before we get to today's discussion, I want to encourage you and remind you to make sure you subscribe and rate, review our podcast. It helps us get the word out about the podcast. And really, listen, all we're asking you to do is to subscribe and then to share it with somebody you know who could use some encouragement and some equipping in the areas of church leadership. We love to do this, and this is one of the greatest joys of our ministry and our partnership together. So I'm excited about it. And look, I think all of us, Andy, would love to have a humongous staff team, right? We dream, whether we're at a large church or a tiny church, we dream of a staff team of like 20 people. Most of us can't do that. Most of us, in fact, probably most of you listening or watching would never even think that that's possible. But I believe it is possible to have a larger staff team, whether you're a solo pastor or whether you have one or two or three part-time or full-time staff members on your team. It is possible to have a larger staff team without spending a dime.
That sounds crazy, Mark.
It does sound crazy.
It's almost as crazy as where we're standing right now. We normally are either separated by distance and brought together by technology,
Yep.
or we're in the same room sitting and talking. We decided we'd mix it up a little bit and be in an actual space where we worship. So we wanted to do this to kind of mix it up a little bit because we're talking about something that's a little bit different than we normally talk about. Normally we talk about, hey, how do you recruit and hire the right staff people? How do you bring the right people from outside your church and acclimate them to your church culture, make sure they're the right hire and the right fit and they're the right person that has the right chemistry, all of those things. Mark, you're saying it's possible that you don't have to always look outside your church. Sometimes you can develop and promote people from within your church and even have them come and do things where they volunteer.
That's exactly right. We've even talked about, hiring from within before. Mm-hmm. But this is a little different discussion. We're really talking about how do you develop, enlist, bring on board volunteer staff members. And it's a unique concept. And it's not one that we're unfamiliar with. So we do have a little experience in this. And so we're going to talk about how maybe you can do that. And look, maybe you have a church where you have staff members who are paid right now. I believe you still can bring on a volunteer staff member. And maybe you're a solo pastor. A lot of you watching and listening are. Well, rather than, blowing your budget that you have planned for ministry next year, maybe you can bring on a volunteer staff member that can do some of the same things. So we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, and some of you watching or listening may not have a choice. You may have to look within your church to ask people to volunteer for key leadership positions. And we want to talk a little bit about that too, how some of us want to do that. We want to look at our congregation and look who it would be a great fit for a certain key leadership position and be able to equip them and empower them to do that. But sometimes we don't have a choice. Sometimes our resources are so limited, or even the pool of people we may have to pick from may be limited. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we do that properly. So Mark, let's start with this. What would it look like to have somebody on a team who is a staff volunteer versus someone who is part-time or full-time that's paid?
That's a great question. So I think what I want to do is encourage you and challenge you to begin looking at this from a different perspective. So just from experience, so we have, at our church, we have paid staff members, but we also have volunteer staff members. Now, when I first got to the church I served, Fultondale First, 7 years ago, I knew that we needed a bigger team. We had a small team, and the budget wouldn't allow for us to hire, any other staff members, but I knew we had to have a larger team. So I thought the best way to do that is to enlist some people. And I think the difference between maybe enlisting a volunteer to a key role and then, versus having somebody as a volunteer staff member, you're essentially empowering that staff member the same way you would a paid staff member. You're handing over the keys to whatever ministry or area of responsibility, just as you would someone who is paid. The difference is you're not paying them, right? And so that means you include them in staff meetings. You include them in discussions and decision making and all of that. And you really do empower them in a way that they feel the responsibility and the encouragement of that ministry area. And so I think it can look differently maybe for you than it would for Andy or me, but it looks like you bringing someone on board, you onboarding them like you would a staff member who's paid, training them, providing conferencing or, just in-house training, the same you would as a paid staff member, and involving them in ways that you would a paid staff member. The difference, I think, is you probably can't expect as much time. You certainly can't expect as much expertise as someone who has gone to seminary or been in church ministry for years. I will say this though: sometimes you get, even though you're not paying them, you get a better staff member than you would hiring from seminary because you don't have to de-church them. But I think the value in that is you're bringing someone on board who already knows your culture and who buys into your vision, because we're going to talk about this in a minute. You're really bringing people on board that rise to the top already.
So I know a lot of people might identify with this principle as having a lay pastor or a lay elder,
That's right.
Somebody who is volunteering without pay to serve in a key role, staff position. So some of you may be familiar with that. Maybe you've never explored that opportunity for your church, or maybe you've never seen that as an option that you think would work in your context. I think it works in any context, Mark. I think no matter the size of your congregation, no matter the size of your budget or the size of your current staff, I think there's opportunities out there for us to invest in our people in a way where we continually invest in them, equip them, and you begin to see those leaders, the cream rises to the top, and
That's right.
and you're able to empower them and give them more opportunities. And I know that's not really a traditional way of doing things. Traditionally, you have the recruiting process where you go ask for resumes, or you put that job opening on a website, or you go to a firm and ask them to help you fill this position. We're probably not talking about a lead pastor here. We're probably talking more of support staff and
right.
second chair kind of positions, people that can support the pastor in his role to equip and empower and encourage the church. So in doing this, it's an option mainly because it's free.
That's right.
Now, it's not totally free. It costs you something, but you're not having to pay an actual salary to someone. So there is the one of the greatest benefits. But I think one of the greater benefits than not having to pay somebody on staff is, like you mentioned, it's somebody that you've already seen grow in their faith, get plugged into your church, serve faithfully, and they walk alongside you in the vision and the mission that you have for your church.
right.
They're familiar with those things already, so you don't have to acclimate them to that. Now, there may be an onboarding process of what it looks like to serve as a ministry staff and your expectations of them outside of just being a key leader, a volunteer, or a teacher. There's more to it than that. So let me ask you this, Mark. How do we identify, how do we recruit, how do we develop these volunteers so that we can have some kind of system or process to move people along so that when they're ready, that person can be called on and asked to prayerfully consider serving as a volunteer staff?
That's good too, and I think Andy and I both can talk about this a little bit. I think it starts with disciple making, right? So leadership development has to be a part of your process to make disciples, and so the people that you're going to identify, the cream that rises to the top, you're going to see that rise as you disciple others. Absolutely. Or as people you've disciple other people. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody you personally discipled, but you have those relationships, already built in with those people, and they are the ones who are faithful, right? Faithful to the process of being discipled. They're the ones that are more committed to the vision and the mission. As just practically, if I decide, hey, we need somebody to lead our reach team, outreach, missions and all that, and we have an outreach event, I guarantee you if we're going to enlist somebody to be a volunteer staff member, they're probably leading that event or a big part of it.
Absolutely.
Or passionate about it. And so I think we have to do, that's the hard work. We have to do the hard work of thinking through how do we develop leaders, and it's got to be part of that disciple making process. But as we do that, there naturally are going to be some people who rise above the rest.
Yeah, I would strongly suggest not going to someone who never ever involves themselves in the children's ministry and ask them to lead some aspect of your children's ministry.
That's probably a red flag.
I mean, if they don't like kids, it's probably not a good idea to ask them to be a volunteer staff member over your
right.
children's ministry. So, I mean, you're looking for people who, I mean, they have that track record, their character is there, they're growing in their faith, they're hungry, they're wanting to serve, and giving them this responsibility is a really big deal.
Absolutely.
And when you begin to identify these people, I mean, there are different demographics you can look at in your church to identify and see what a certain age group might bring to the table as a volunteer staff person. So for me, you think about, your young adults and your young professionals and young families, sometimes they have a lot to offer. We know they have a lot on their plates and they're very, very busy, but there may be somebody who's already showing you that they've got that time and they're willing to give you that time. It may be a stay-at-home mom who already is investing in your children's ministry. She would be a great fit to coordinate some ministry effort as a staff volunteer. Or it may be a volunteer that's retired.
That's right.
And they can give you 10 hours a week or 15 hours a week of their time. Maybe they have some professional training or some kind of really great experience along with their character and faith investing in your church that they could help you out. Maybe it's some day-to-day administrative help or clerical help, or maybe it is some practical teaching and ministry stuff that somebody that can give you. I mean, to quote a famous movie, old people, though slow and dangerous behind the wheel, can still prove useful to society, right?
That's right.
So, but don't take that as a standard of looking for people to serve. But I mean, no matter the age, you're looking at people wherever they are in life can bring something valuable to the table as a volunteer staff member.
That's right. And again, they're the ones that are already stepping up in lots of ways. At our church, we've had two people who are retired really play a huge part in the administrative aspects of our church. We have currently, right now, we have somebody who's over the connections of our church. We have somebody over discipleship, volunteers, both of the volunteers. We have somebody over our reach, ministry, volunteer. And so we actually, really radical, we have transitioned our student ministry at our church to volunteer teams. And so we have a volunteer youth ministry leader, student ministry leader over those teams. And again, I think it all depends on your context, but I can guarantee you already have somebody in your church who is really close to that role already. And, you don't want to just bring on volunteer staff members who are the most active, because sometimes the most active people are active for the wrong reasons, right? Mm-hmm. So they've got to be in line with your mission and your vision for the church that God has given you, and they've got to be willing to work in the confines of the strategy that you've developed. But if they've been discipled and they're stepping up and they're doing the right things, I think they're highly qualified.
Absolutely. And I think it's easy to fall into the temptation and the trap of maybe asking too much of someone who volunteers, because we tend to think, all right, they're a staff member, we can ask the same thing and have the same expectations of them and their time and what they're required to do as that of a part-time or full-time staff member. And that's probably not the case. It's probably not healthy to ask too much of them. So what are some ways we can know, Mark, that we're in that balance where we're letting their schedule dictate the amount of time that they can give and maybe that role that they're in, what that would require?
Yeah, I think it depends, on the person and on their life situation. That's where relationship comes into this. I think you have to tailor it based on the person and the position, that you're asking for them to do. You want them to have a healthy margin in their life just like anyone else. And so you've got to make sure you have to be disciplined to create that margin, because let's be honest, if they're so passionate that they're willing to be a volunteer staff member, they're probably not going to say no to anything. And so you've got to build in those
And
guardrails
we have to be
for 'em.
careful. It's tempting. It's tempting
It
when
is.
somebody wants to do everything that you just turn them loose and let them.
That's right.
So
That's a recipe for disaster.
it is.
In their life and in your church. So I think you have to design it with more than enough margin. You want to be able to say, you want to be able to hear them say, "Hey, I can do more," rather than, "I don't think I can do that," right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they say, "I don't think I can do that," then you probably already asked too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's, another question, Andy, is, well, how do I enlist volunteer staff members when I have paid staff members, right? How do I get them from, keep them from being jealous, or how can I ask them to do this when I'm paying this person to do this? So how do we figure that balance out?
Yeah, that's a tough balance. You don't want to create jealousy on one hand, and you don't want to create the opportunity to give people more influence or more opportunities than you do someone else. And just like you said, I think those discipling relationships that we've developed with these people over time, we get to know them and their personalities, but also we get to connect them into a team, and they become part of the team. They're not like the JV team and the paid staff or the varsity. Everybody's on the same team. So you have to create a culture within your team, within your staff, whether they're volunteer or paid, to let everybody know, listen, everybody here has different responsibilities, but we're equally important. What we bring to the table is equally important. And that needs to be shared with your church as well, not just on your team, but you need to highlight and celebrate what your staff is doing, whether they're paid or volunteered. It doesn't mean you're bragging on them constantly. It just means you're bringing up the way that God is working in and through them and how your church is healthier and benefits from
That's
that.
exactly right. For us as a church, obviously we have a budget every year and people see that budget, but we don't break down, each specific position and what they get paid. We believe that's a privacy issue. And so quite honestly, we don't even, unless someone asks, we don't even share whether our staff members are volunteer or paid. They are all listed the exact same way. And so our, the general, attender at our church has no clue whether one person is paid or volunteer. And I think that's important because it adds value to those volunteer staff members. And it doesn't create, unreal expectations for the ones who are paid.
Right. Well, what a healthy thing it is to even think this way, to think that we can disciple our people and invest in our people, and having some kind of strategy or process to equip them and build them up and then empower them to be able to lead at some level that we see them being faithful to that and being helpful to our church. Not that they're going to have all wins and zero losses. I mean, you're going to watch them fail, and even how they struggle through those failures is going to tell you a lot of how they're going to react and work within your context and culture in your church. But man, what a great testimony of a church who's able to bring people on board and give them these crucial leadership positions, but also their willingness to do that, to invest in the kingdom, to invest in your church family, and to help you accomplish what you want to accomplish, which is what we want. We want to help you do that. And if we can help you in any way, answer any questions, we may not have all the answers. We're still constantly learning and struggling and experimenting. And I'm telling you, it is a reward of, a way I can't even describe it to you, to bring people on board and to allow them to serve in a place that they feel valued and your church has helped. I mean, what a wonderful, wonderful thing that is, that your church can become healthier through investing in those disciples and leaders and then them becoming a key leader and a staff person.
That's right. We would love to hear from you if you've already done this, or if this sparks, kind of the genesis of an idea in your head, in your mind, your heart about what God may want to do in your church to expand your staff. We would love to hear your thoughts and your questions. And if you do this and God uses it, man, we would love to hear that. That would encourage us. And so we hope this has been a practical encouragement to you. Maybe it's equipped you with an idea that you never thought could be possible. And hopefully God uses it to continue to expand the impact of your ministry and your leadership in your church.
That's right, Mark. And I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you being a staff who's volunteer here on the Church Leadership Podcast. I mean, what a blessing
Same
it
to
is.
you.
So
Same
what a blessing
to you,
it is.
Andy.
But all of you, we appreciate all of you, and we hope that this episode has helped you become better encouraged and better equipped to lead in your local church, even with volunteers. And we pray God blesses you in your efforts to do that.
See you next time.
Thanks for joining in. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Help us spread the word about the podcast by sharing on socials too. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.